Hi there, I'm Dani, spiritualtherapist.com, and I'm absolutely thrilled. And I've been trying to get this beautiful, great legend of a man on the screen with me for quite some time. And I'm so blessed that he agreed to have a little chit chat and bring some more information about who he is. Without any further ado, I'm going to introduce the great, the legend, James Gilliland. James, welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me on the show.
So
I always refer to
excited.
myself as nobody. It works. There's nobody to defend or nobody, it works great.
Well, it's funny, Megan Rose, our mutual friend, she actually already made the thumbnail for this broadcast, and I think it has
Oh,
the word legend in it there as well.
oh.
So, so we're going to big
Those are
you up.
big shoes to walk in.
Not well, you created them. You created them without ego. That's the thing, right?
Yeah.
That is the thing. It's interesting as well, talking about ego, because the thing I notice about you, about Michael Salla, about Elena Danan, and about Megan Rose in particular, is the common core value that you all project is kindness and
Oh, thank
humbleness.
you.
Yeah, and humor, and that to me, that is real leadership, especially in this current time that we're in on this bonkers planet right now.
Yeah, somebody once told me I was a cross between an imp, Santa Claus, and Jesus, and I said, "Well, I'll take the imp."
Yeah, yes, the naughty character, the character that has
Much easier role to play.
Definitely. Well, I'd love to start by asking you really like who little James was. And what I mean by that was I would love you to really have a think and share with us, like, what was your very, very first memory of being on this planet?
Oh boy. Yeah, well, I remember in diapers. I remember being raised in diapers, and I described the house perfectly, and I was always running off, and we had a dog that used to grab me and bring me back all the time, grab me by the diapers. It was a uh, oh God, what was that dog? I'm trying. Well, I'll think of it. But her name was Britta, and she was oh, it's not a boxer. She was a boxer, and beautiful dog, really brilliant, and but she would always take care of us. And I remember that. I remember at the age of about 5 having a lot of contacts happening, a lot of conversations with some very loving, beautiful women mostly, and they were Palladians. And then I also had some intrusions by some of the Greys and the other ones. And my dad came in my room one day and I was screwing the door shut, and I think screws are pretty overrated as far as keeping them out, but I
Yeah.
didn't know better. And he asked me, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I'm keeping them out." He goes, "Who are them?" I said, "I don't know. They're really ugly. I don't like them. They come through the wall." And he understood because he'd had contact his whole life, and our whole family's been involved in this stuff. So he understood, and he says, "All right," and just walked out and let me put the screws in the door.
Wow.
But and that was interesting. But uh, I was extremely sensitive as a kid. I knew what people are thinking and feeling and what they're saying all at the same time, and they were never congruent. It was really hard for me.
Mm.
Uh, and I had all kinds of experiences. We used to sleep outside on the lawn in the desert. We were raised in the high desert, and we would see ships all the time coming over, doing zigzag patterns, taking off. And to me, it was a no-brainer. I mean, when you're raised like that and you have all those experiences, it's never a matter of do they exist,
Yeah.
or things like that. It never was. It was just, it was part of my life basically. And my whole family was pretty much involved in it. And my grandfather was involved in Roswell. He sold all the equipment to the Swenson Ranch, the farm equipment, and he knew them really well. And the first responders, the sheriffs, came to our house and talked to my grandmother at the time, and or my grandmother's house, I should say. But and they told her, that the about what happened, and she said, of course, it's a big universe. My grandmother's she was like the school teacher and the matriarch of the town, kind of. And she said that these guys were shaking. They couldn't even hold a coffee cup. And these are good old boys,
Mhm.
honest as the day is long. And she said that it really affected them. She said she had no doubt that there was a crash there in their bodies and everything else. So, I mean, it's somehow we're always tied into it. My dad used to pull over on the road and say, "Get out of the car," and we'd all get out of the car, and he'd say, "Look up." There'd be like 5 ships over our heads. So
Yeah.
it was common. It was just something that we just accepted.
It's so wonderful to hear of somebody who's actually had a growing up period from childhood to adulthood with a family who were also awake and aware that we're seeing in reality, what this kind of phenomena, this other side of life, this on-off planet existence actually is. I'm really happy for you, because it's not the case
Yeah.
of most people, to have that. When you mentioned that you saw females coming in very first, can you describe the very first encounter you can remember? And was it telepathic? What did she look like? Was it one feminine being on her own? And what did you feel? Do you remember feeling? And how old were you?
Yeah, I was very young, about 5 or 6, and it seemed like a dream almost. It's like there was a scene in oh, I think it was Lord of the Rings or whatever they call it, where the Elven being was talking with her husband or boyfriend, or they were going to get married and everything. And they're always in between worlds having conversations, and it was kind of misty, or it was kind of like that experience in the beginning. And then it got closer and closer. And then pretty soon it was like full blown contact where they were appearing in my room. They were taking me up on the ships and things like that. So it kind of elevated, from a very spiritual experience to a spiritual physical experience, you might say.
Right, right. And so were the main contactees at that time Pleiadian?
Yeah, they were Pleiadians and also Mary. I had strong connection with Mary because at 5 years old, I was dying. I was in the hospital and I had bronchial pneumonia. And she kept appearing to me and she was wearing all blue. And 3 or 4 times, I'm not sure how many times, at least 3 or 4, might have been more. The doctors called my parents and said, "We don't think he's going to make it through the night, and my vitals are way down." And she would appear to me and stroke my head and talk to me and then pull me
Mm,
out of it,
mm.
and which was interesting. And I didn't know who she was. I had no idea who she was. And I kept asking for the woman in blue, and they all wore green smocks at the hospital. So
Ah,
they go, "He's delusional. But I was just in between worlds. And the last meeting, she gave me a substance that was like ice cream, and I ate it, but it wasn't cold, and I was never sick after that. And I'm pretty sure I know what it is. It's like a crystallized oxygen formula. And I know people that actually have that on the planet right now that are creating things like that.
that's amazing. How wonderful to get a glimpse of that technology and actually ingest it into your own beautiful body. Wow.
Yeah.
You say that you didn't know who Mary was, Mother Mary was, when you first saw her. So did you have any kind of religious upbringing at all? Was there any kind of influences like that in your world?
Well, my dad was kind of like a walking Buddha. He just lived it. He was
Mm,
very loving, very sensitive, always there. He disciplined us when we deserved it. We knew we totally deserved it. And I had total respect for him. He studied, a lot of Eastern thought, and he was very well read. He was like a genius, basically. I think he wasn't even 20 years old and he was already a dentist,
mm.
so he was way beyond what most people. And there's a long story to that because there's been a lot of genetic tinkering, in our family, you might say that. It's funny because my nephews and their kids too their IQs are off the scale. It's amazing. But they're like 3 years old and it's reciting the alphabet backward and forward and
Wow.
photographic memories and everything else. But it's kind of like a genetic thing in our family. But I was going back to the with Mary, not really. He took us to church several times, and then he took us to the Sunday school, where all the kids got together, and then he asked us afterwards, what do we think? And I said, I don't like it. I said, these people aren't loving, and
Mm.
they're not loving. There's something wrong here, and I said, I would rather just be with you out in nature,
Wow,
and
that's so lovely.
they're laying guilt trips on at a very early age, and guilt trips, and trying to give us an image of this jealous, wrathful God, and
Right.
we just weren't buying it. We just said,
Yeah.
no, I'm not going there.
Wow, that's wonderful. Good for you for having that strength of
Mm,
character, you and your siblings at that time. When you
mm.
started realizing that you were beaming on board an actual craft, can you remember what that felt like? What color was the light? If a light came in the room, did you feel the desensification? Like, what was the experience like, James?
Well, the first ones were just kind of misty white, and I was having conversations in this energy field, you might say, with them. And then later it evolved to where I was actually on craft. They gave me an outfit to wear, to put on, and there was a 3-seater craft, and they would fly me to places, and there would be events that I would see later that would verify the experience. Because when these things happen, they'll beam you right out of your bed up on the ship, and you think it was just a really vivid dream, and then you find out, wait a second, and one time they flew me to a fire tower spotter, and there is a elderly gentleman and his wife and his grandkid were there in the fire tower. They rent these fire towers out once in a while out here. And they took me over to the fire tower, and they parked right in front of the window, and they were kind of freaking out. And they were standing there calming them down, using telepathy to calm them down. And so the kid got his crayons out and started drawing pictures of it. And they didn't get any photos. I don't know why they didn't get photos, but later I see them on town hall talking about their story. And I was actually on that ship, that they were talking about. And so,
Wow.
things like that, they keep validating, the experiences, and then some of the ships I went on were not of this dimension. We're multidimensional beings, and we have a body within a body all the way back to source. And we can leave in a light body or an etheric body and go on these ships. And some of these ships I went on a lot of them were 6th and 5th dimensional ships. And I saw a whole myriad of beings on these ships. Some were little guys, some were different colors, some were blue, some were kind of a golden color. There was very tall beings on these ships. A lot of beings wore robes, and there was giants, on these ships, and very tall beings, and a lot of the ships had feline beings, humanoid feline beings on them, and things like that. So I mean, they all were humanoid, but they were different. There was a really wide variety of beings on these ships, and they're really busy monitoring the earth and assisting the earth, to get through these times right now.
Did you ever ask any of these beings why you were chosen to be beaming on board and connecting with them in particular when you were a child?
Yeah, I know now. At the time, I didn't know it. Later on, I figured it out, but it's because of past lives, and I have a long history of, I was a captain on a ship that did a lot of damage to the reptilians and things like that. And then I have a long history of lives in very spiritually advanced cultures, and I have full memory of those lives. And so when I was very young, I think I was about 8 years old. I'm not sure how old I was, but they took me before a council, and had a very tall guy with gray robes, and they brought me before a council, and I was looking up at this council, and some were masters that were known to Earth, and others were not human. They're not human as we know it, put it that way. Some were very thin, very tall, some were blue skinned, some were different. And this master that brought me there presented me, and I'm trying to think of how to say this. I don't want to say I was the chosen one, because it's not that. There's a lot of people that have had the same experience, but for some reason they chose me and presented me before the council to have. And I haven't told this story. This is a story I've kind of kept to myself, but I never knew what it was about. All I knew was I was presented to this council. I saw beings that looked like Jesus and Babaji, and there was women on the council, and again some beings that weren't human like we know it. And the next thing you know, they agreed, and I came back, and it's just been a long journey ever since that it's been unfolding. And, I don't know the whole story. I don't think any of us do. We just have this feeling, this gut feeling, we're here to do something. We're here to make a change. And we just don't fit. We don't fit in with society the way it is now. It's maybe in the
Yeah.
future we will.
Yeah. Yeah. No, we didn't come to fit in. It's that simple. So this is incredible. Thank you for sharing that news story. That's so wonderful to hear. And I'm glad you have full kind of recall of it also. So now you're kind of an 8-year-old little boy, brothers, you're all seeing similar things. How did you fit in school? Like, did your brothers and you and your siblings have conversations about the craft you were seeing? And then what was it like having to be in school and fitting into that structure that you clearly didn't fit into?
Yeah, yeah. I found a report card when some of my mom's stuff, and the report card, the teacher said, "We're really worried about James. He doesn't really fit in with the other kids, and he's always gone. He's always off in the desert, but he does make it back on time." She goes, "He makes it back on time for class, but he just goes off in the desert and does his own thing." And I felt really good there in the desert. And and a lot of kids in a younger age are cruel, and there's all that macho and positioning and all that stuff. And as a kid, I was kind of picked on because I was just to myself and I didn't want to deal it. And I remember this one guy was really bullying me, and it was really weird. I also had this incredible strength. I don't know where it came from. And so the biggest guy in school was bullying me, and I took him down. And then that was
Mm.
it. And that was it. And then I had a reputation, I guess. And then they left me alone until high school. And then I was only like right now I'm about 5'11", but I was only 4 feet tall. Like I was under 5 feet tall, put it that way. When I went into high school, I was like 4'11" or something like that.
Oh,
I was small, and because I was small, there's a lot of people that would try to bully me. And I remember I went into the weight room, and all the football players, were working out in there, and they had this big barbell, and they were doing curls with it. And I went up there and I grabbed it with one arm and jerked it and pushed it up and put it down. And then after that, they left me alone,
that's
so
fantastic.
yeah, it
Wow.
was strange. I
Yeah.
seem to have an ability to move matter easier than
Yeah.
some folks.
Because this superhuman off and on planet ability that you had that you came in with. I mean, it's great. And I think there was guidance there to protect little you as well. Can
Yeah.
you share, like, what was James Gilliland's bedroom like? What posters did you have on the wall? Were you into Meccano, trains? Did you build model planes? Like, what was the kind of image that we could kind of imagine about you as a child?
I don't really remember any posters on the wall. I wasn't really into posters. I was up and gone whenever I could. When we were kids, my dad took us down and gave us mohawk haircuts because he said we acted like little Indians anyway. Because we had little cutoffs, and jeans, and that was it. And we didn't wear shoes, and we had thick calluses, and we are just off into the desert whenever we could. If we weren't at school, we were off hiking or doing something else. So um, yeah, I don't really remember any posters or anything. If I could get out in nature, I did. I was just gone.
Wow. Was it all brothers that you have?
No, I have a brother and two sisters.
Right. So did they ever report going up and down on ships and seeing beings in their rooms too?
I know my brother did. My brother had experiences because we shared a room together. We were in bunk beds, and he had a lot of experiences. Um, one of my sisters has had some encounters, and I have another sister that's kind of doing her own thing, that's kind of different than the rest of us. But
Yeah, yeah. That we find that in every family generally, don't we? Wow,
yeah,
that's
yeah.
amazing. So what was your driving force? You get through school, you're there, like what did you have an idea that you were going to become or do or study? Were the memories of being taken up and meeting these benevolent beings always with you, or did you kind of block it out sometimes as well?
Well, when I got older, I kind of blocked it out because you couldn't talk about it. It's like later on, I was in Orange County, and it's very materialistic there. And I really didn't have anybody to talk to, and I just kind of blocked it out. And I was in commercial real estate, and I was on the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce at a very young age, and I was going to college too, and that just, when I went to college, I just did a real diverse thing. I took like biology, chemistry, physics, pre-law, I even took pre-dental, and just got a rounded education. But I got kicked out of some of the classes because it's like my psychology class. I got kicked out because I wrote a paper on reincarnation and how we can't just say this is childhood trauma that's happening here, because it's not adding up, the traumas that people are carrying with them, because you have somebody raised in the middle of the desert who's never seen the ocean or lake or river and has a deep fear of drowning, or somebody fear of snakes or something, and they're in an area where there aren't any, there's all these weird things, and it's been really established that we live past lives and things like that. But I wrote a paper and I used all these documented cases, and I just said these fears and phobias and child prodigies didn't just happen. These were master musicians in a past life, or they had trauma from a past life and it's carrying on in this life, and we have to address that for complete healing. So my teacher there said, I don't care if you show up at every class, you're going to get an F, so you might as well leave now. He was really upset. And I'd get in, and chemistry class, I'd say, he'd go, well, everything goes down to the elements, and I'd go, well, where'd the elements come from? Where? And I said, there's some kind of intelligent design behind all this. It didn't happen randomly. It's impossible. And so I got same thing. He got angry with me because he couldn't answer the questions I was asking.
Right. Yeah.
And then I just saw what they're teaching was so ridiculous. It was so, it wasn't, these guys, we look up to them to be our teachers, and we can teach them. It's kind of sad, they're not open to any greater reality other than their own book knowledge or the book they wrote. So
yeah, wow. So did you get through college, any kind of college, and graduate, or were you kind of like done at that point?
No, I left and I went to, I started thinking about it, and I said, I go, what's the quickest way I can make money so I can be free to do my own thing and be out in nature? And then I thought about real estate, and I go, this is probably the fastest way. So I'll do my time. And I did. And I ended up with my own office and had people working with me. And then I had a drowning where I drowned, and I crossed over, went through the tunnel everybody talks about, and ended up in the golden plane of bliss. And when I came back, I just walked away from the office. I sold everything and gave everything away. Said, I'm done.
Was this your second near-death experience? The first one being as a little boy with the bronchial pneumonia. Your second. What led up to the drowning? Like, what actually happened to you?
Well, I was out body surfing, and in high school I was like captain of the water polo team and on the swim team and everything. So I thought I was bulletproof in the water, and these sneaker waves came in out of nowhere, and they were like 17 to 25 foot waves, and just slammed me and knocked the wind out of me and held me under forever. And after the third wave, I just gave up and surrendered and went through the tunnel that everybody talks about. And it ended up, it's interesting where I went through all these levels. I didn't stop to talk. I tell people, go for the golden light, the plane of bliss. Don't stop to talk. If you see a relative, say, hey, good seeing you, but keep going, don't stop, because you can always come back. You can always come back down through the continuum. But I ended up in the plane of bliss, and I had a conversation with what I call the source or creator, God, whatever name you want to give it. And the first thing I asked was, how can I stay? And the voice came back to me and said, I never told my children when to come or go. That's free will, And I just went, so the next thing I asked, because I had some programming, guilt programming, I said, how can I earn the right to stay? Because you're so blissed out, you're in full bliss. There's no words for it. And the voice came back to me and said, you can't earn what is given freely and unconditionally, and I'm going, wait a second, this isn't the God I was told about. This is not the jealous, wrathful God. This is not a judging God. This is just pure bliss, pure love and joy. and then I asked him, the third thing I asked was, how can I serve? And it came back to me, it says, what do you want to do? What brings you joy? And I realized, I go, that's what it's all about. The more you're in love and joy and bliss, the closer you are to God.
Mm.
And all that God asks of us is to be happy, to do what brings you joy, and not like society, and all the other programs running. They're actually the opposite. But so finally I said, I want to come back and teach people about the true nature of God, what it really is. And I heard As You Wish, and the next thing you know, I was back in my body, and the lifeguards were pulling me out of the water. And then I passed out on the beach because a lot of people got hurt in that experience. There's people on the jetty fishing, they got wiped off the jetty, and it was a mess. They're pulling people in right and left. And next thing I heard, somebody calling my voice, and my friend I was with got thrown over the jetty and got torn up pretty bad. So I had to go from there and drive to the hospital to talk to him to keep him from going into shock, So patching him back together. But I was in no condition. I was blacking out and had to pull over. I made it to the hospital, and I walked in the hospital, and I couldn't see anything. I was just overwhelmed with all the energy, in the hospital.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So I got him through till his parents came, and then they drove me home.
Gosh. So when you realize that you're in a drowning event and you've left the body, the astral, the whatever it's going, you're going up and up, and you knew something in you knew to keep going and going and going and going. When you come into that meeting, that communion with source, or with what some people call God, and you realize it's unconditional, what did it look like? What did it feel like? And where did the sound come to you or through you from the voice?
Well, it's hard to explain because you're no longer in a physical body, you're in a light body. But there's a greater light, a greater consciousness and energy surrounding you. And the sound is coming from everywhere at once. It's because it's kind of a paradox, but you're unique, yet you're one at the same time. So you're in this beautiful, loving, joyous, blissful energy. And you are that energy at the same time. You're just having a conversation. And that's the best way. There's really no words to explain it, because I've gone back a couple times to that plane, and all I can say is I just sat there crying like a baby afterwards, So it's just so blissful. So you're so grateful. There really aren't any words to explain it.
Did the voice or the feeling, the energy, the communion, was it kind of male or female? I don't believe there's a specific, but for some people that so need to believe it's a male, it's a this, it's a that.
Yeah.
Can you describe the kind of voice, what it kind of sounded like? Was it a merging of everything we would imagine in a non-sexual?
I don't think it was male or female, but it felt male. Only because it was being objective and it was coming to me. And usually, because we're both objective, subjective, and males are a little more objective than females. Females are a little more subjective. So the energy was coming to me felt objective, because it's objectively talking to me, and so you experience it that way. But it was very balanced, very powerful at the same time. And people don't understand what power is. The ultimate power is love and joy and service, basically, and bliss. That's the ultimate. It's not being able to throw thunderbolts and lightning and smash your enemy, or those programs aren't. That's not what power is. And some of the most powerful beings I've seen are so balanced you hardly even know they're there. They're beautiful beings, and their energy is very light.
Is there a particular being that you can share, from wherever in the realms, like that you feel this way about?
God, we have a very, very long list, put it that way, of beings, because I've been doing this since '86 intensely here, but even before that as a kid. But I've met so many beings like that. I can't even, I couldn't even, Mary's my go-to. Mary's always hanging around. She saved my life when I was a kid. And so she's always hanging around me. And it's important to know she's not religious. She's not owned by any one religion. She's a universal being, and she's really here for the children. And she's not real happy right now with what's happening with the children. None of them are. And the divine feminine is coming back strong, and it's coming back with a bat, you know.
Yeah,
and
with the bat and Dr. Martens.
Yeah, she showed me a vision of her, and she was standing there in all of her beauty, and then behind her she pulls out a bat, and just as a symbol, and saying, you know, we're not going to tolerate this anymore. So there's big events happening in that arena with the divine feminine. And you know, I've had so many different beings. Bliji, which is a 7th dimensional Palladian, comes to me quite often. And her energy is just so beautiful, very loving. And I have to have pictures of her ships coming in, and they're like a Merkaba ship. I have videos of her ships flying in. Ezekiel is the god of eternal bliss. And that's the being I work with a lot. And it's both male and it's Ezekiel of old that merged with Cassia, a feminine energy, and they soul merged and ascended. And the Andromedans referred to Ezekiel as the god of eternal bliss. And it's just pure bliss, pure love and joy and bliss. So I work a lot with that energy. And I work a lot with the lion beings that are like 17-foot tall lion beings. And they're very good at clearing energies out. And especially, you know, I asked them, I go, what do you do with these reptilians? And they said, we just throw them down and rub their bellies. They said, we're 17 feet tall. Yeah, it's not a problem for us.
Brilliant.
So, yeah. There's so many beings out there, but I work really closely with the Pleiadians, with the Orion Council of Light, which are 6-dimensional beings. They're not to be confused with the Orion Alliance, the Greys and the other stuff.
No.
And they already went through the wars and they transcended it. And now they're here to help liberate the earth. And I work a lot with the Syrians, which are the feline beings. And there's 3 levels to those that we work. Some are humanoid, cat-like beings. Some are upright panther beings, and some are the lion beings, which are very tall, very big. And then we have new groups coming in that are like 13th dimensional beings and 11th dimensional beings. And they just have a group name like the Laka or the Jessai. They're like warriors, and they're here to protect the planet. And they're 11th dimensional beings, but they don't have a name. They just go by a collective name. You know?
Wow. So you mentioned the name of a being, but then you cut out before you got to Ezekiel. It was a feminine being. What was her name?
Are you talking about Bliji?
Bliji. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, Bliji. And then I work a lot with the divine feminine. I have a lot of that coming to me. And then lately I've had a being by the name of Enha, and she's a 6-dimensional kind of a goddess energy. And she's one of the Anunnaki, the benevolent side of the Anunnaki. So there's a lot of misinformation about the Anunnaki that people don't understand that, but the Anunnaki are our ancestors. They're the ancient Lyrans that came here, very tall. Some were like 30 feet tall to 24 feet tall. And they were the original colonies that came here. And then there was other groups like the Pleiadians and the Orion groups came here, and a lot of different groups. The Syrians were here too. And so we've been a series of colonies that have happened on the planet that had to start over as primitives due to cataclysms and pole shifts and massive volcanoes going off, things like that. So we're a whole series of colonization programs. It's not just the Adam and Eve story. And actually the Adam and Eve story happened somewhere else. You know, it's much older than people realize. But I mean, that's a whole book. Actually, I wrote a book, Anunnaki Return, that covers a lot of that. But
excellent.
One of the Anunnaki fell, and his name was Marduk. And a lot of people are working with Marduk, and I tell people stay away from that energy. That's the fallen Anunnaki, and they aligned with the reptilian beings at the time for total supremacy of the earth, and they went against their own people for total dominance, and you know, went warred on and enslaved their own people with this reptilian alliance that they joined. And it was probably the same as the Gray Alliance too. They were all in it together. And Marduk was the one that created that pact, and we've been under this draconian law ever since that pact. And so the benevolent Anunnaki are returning now with the lion beings and the other beings, and they're saying, enough. You know, you've fallen from universal law. It's over. You know, we're restoring the earth. We're restoring universal law. and tyranny's over. You know, your
Yeah.
tyranny's done.
Yeah.
And so they've cleaned up most of that, all the other stuff on the other levels. They've cleaned that up, but now we're still dealing with that dark hierarchy that's on the earth right now. And the Alliance and the other people are working on that, clearing that up. But they did their part by removing all the external and other dimensional negative forces. And so now we're free to move forward. And once we deal with these other tyrannical hierarchies, you know, that we're seeing, they're all coming right up to the surface now, especially in Australia and things.
Yeah.
I mean, they're rising, they're coming forward for everybody to see who they are, and the people are rising up at the same time. And when they fall and we're done with that, we're going to have a quantum leap in consciousness and energy and technology and everything. It's just going to be amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've obviously held the most incredible technology on our planet since as early as 1900 with Nikola Tesla. We already had Wi-Fi, we already had drone technology, we already had the ability to harness the electrical energy on the planet and power up city after city after city. Only man's greed to want to make money has held humanity back. And a lot of people are going to be pissed. When they finally realize how much we've been kept back and lied to, they're going to be pissed. All right. So here so you've had
we also have anti-gravity, counter-gravity.
Oh, yeah.
You know, we have replicators and med technology. All that's on the earth right now. It just needs to be released.
Yeah, definitely. Those bloody Germans, those bloody Nazis, right? With their anti-gravity technology flying, it's like that White House photograph with a load of craft going over. That was the flipping Nazis. That was the Germans. Yeah, exactly. And people think, oh my God, you know, we're being invaded. No, the Germans were saying, don't mess with us. We've got anti-gravity technology and we rule you, which of course they have failed now, of course, because Antarctica has been largely emptied out. But I wanted to go back to when you had your drowning and you went to the plane of bliss and you came back that time and you were in real estate. You said that at that point you were ready to step out. Where did you go from there?
Oh, after the near-death experience, I went up and I went up in the high desert at first, and I was doing construction up there for a little while, and then I moved from there to the redwoods in Northern California, in the Santa Cruz Mountains up there. And I was really having trouble because I was so sensitive that, again, people would say one thing, they'd feel something else and think something else. Well, I was getting all three inputs. So I was having a hard time being around people. Energetically, the only place I really fit in was nature, you know, and so I was living in a tent in the redwoods, basically. And then I spent quite a few years there in Santa Cruz, and I actually I sold my house in Orange County that I had, and I bought a house in Santa Cruz, right off the beach there. And then I fixed that house up and sold it, and that's how I bought the ranch here. But that's basically, I was really struggling. I mean, things were morphing in and out of existence around me, and I was really having trouble. You know, even I would walk down the beach and there'd be trash on the beach, and my thought would be, how could somebody leave trash on the beach? And then I'd watch the trash turn into these little gold balls of light, and then and disappear, and then it would reappear as trash. And I go, wow, it blew my mind, because I go, everything is just energy. It's just consciousness and energy condensed into physical form. And there's better ways of creating things, but it blasts me out of judgment, you know. And right now I see, like, nobody knows what another soul needs for completion. I mean, there might be a high master being that's just working out one thing, and it may seem really stupid to us, but it's that one issue they need to work out, and then they're gone, they're out of here. So we need to realize that, you know, we don't know what another soul needs for completion, you know, but we do need to hold them accountable to universal law, you know. So
yeah, and each person's on their individual journey too, of course. So wow. So Wow, living with the redwoods, that must have been an amazing experience. I learned years ago when I was studying metaphysics that the redwoods, they call them, some people refer to them as the giants. And without them anchoring their energy onto the planet, there wouldn't have been the kind of balance initially, like for us to come. So
Mhm.
I'm really happy that you had that beautiful experience there. So were
They had
you,
all the animals coming right up to me. It was like the animals just were coming right up, and I'd be sitting there, and I'd have squirrels jumping on my lap, and shoulders, and birds, and it was crazy. Yeah.
oh, goodness. So how old are you now? And tell us about finding this ranch and what you named it and why you named it what it is to this day.
Yeah, my age now is a top secret. But my memories go back before the earth was physical. So I don't, I just see. And then I had a couple resets along the way. So it's kind of, I really don't do age. I don't even think about it. Um, I kind of scare people when they find out how old I am. But I've been around for quite a while. But in the 86 is when I established the ranch here.
Mm.
But what's funny is I have people coming to me and they'll go, and I'll tell them what's going on, and they'll go, have you run this by like Wilcox or these other people? And I mean, they're all doing great work, but I go, I
Dude.
saw this before he was born, probably,
Yeah.
and
I mean,
you know,
yeah, I know. It's funny. It's a funny thing. Like, nobody has ownership because we're ancient souls, a lot of us, and we've had all
yeah,
these experiences, like you, like Alex Collier, for over 50 years. We're talking from
yeah,
childhood to now. I mean, and plus, it's over 50 years. So, like, get in line, boys, get in line, girls. I mean, honestly, the array of beings and the experiences that you've had really like supersedes so many of the people who are kind of doing the rounds now, but love them all. I mean, I'm very close to some of them and I admire them all. And, people
mhm,
think it's so glamorous, so glamorous being beamed off up and down board. But what they don't realize is the trauma and the mutilation of so many little girls that have been so abused by nasty greys and reptilians, they haven't been
mhm,
able to have their own children because they're so mutilated, and then people are
yeah,
attacking them. It's just extremely sad to me, and wrong, because the information, the knowledge, now it's out. We're all being opened to it, and leadership like yours and leaders like you, have really set a beautiful path down. So what was
mhm.
it about the energy? Because obviously you're sensitive, you've done so much inner work. What was it about the energy of the ranch that you felt when you first went there, and why?
Um, well, it's funny because I had visions of the ranch before I came here, and I saw this beautiful mountain, and we're right at the base of Mount Adams, and I saw a river, and I saw a little mountain behind us, and then I saw the words "little mountain," which made no sense. I go, why are you talking about a little mountain when there's this massive mountain, in front of me? And so anyway, I'm looking at this vision. Then I got a map of the United States and I used divination things and I found out exactly where it was. And what's funny is I threw the map in the closet and I forgot about it and I ended up here anyway through a series of synchronistic events, but
Yeah.
which is another long story, but it's kind of interesting. But when I got on the land, I felt the energy, and the mountain had this huge lenticular cloud lit up, and then they started fingering up into space, and it looked like something out of that movie, The Old Testament. And I had eagles over my head, and I was tears coming down. And I go, this is it.
Ah,
This is the
ah,
spot. So, but that's kind of how that came about. And then everybody thought there was this crazy guy building this ark out in the middle of the field, because I was using an old bridge that went across the river, and I built the bridge house, the main lodge at the time. And since then, we have a big conference building and outbuildings and everything else since then. But everybody goes, the guy's nuts, and I would do my meditation early in the morning and do my energy work, and then I'd go and have breakfast, and I was higher than a kite and lit up. So a lot of the townspeople thought I was drunk or on drugs or doing meth or something. There's rumors about that, and I go, no, I'm just high on life. It's just like, uh, I just was zinging. I don't do any drugs and I don't drink or anything. But so it was kind of like weird because although, and I was trying to fit in, I was wearing flannel and, everything, trying to be a good old boy. And I was raised in a hunting and fishing family and environment, and plus I was a carpenter and all that stuff. So I fit in pretty well. And I was always finding everything for people. Their animals would get lost and they'd end up, and I'd bring their cows back and pigs and things like that.
Wow.
Because they'd always they come to the ranch because of the energy here.
Mm.
But the ranch itself is a vortex, and then the mountain is a massive vortex, and then there's more energy coming off the mountain than the pyramids. And we've actually filmed it. You can use PIP technology and see the energy coming off. And there's multi-levels to the mountain. There's a door to the inner earth. There's galactic airport in there. There's extreme technology. There's like everything going on there. It's just amazing. But I was seeing all that. But what's really interesting is I was really focusing on creating an alternative healing center and working with consciousness and energy and transpersonal release sessions where we were going to clear people's childhood trauma, past life trauma, and hook them up with their other connections and things like that. We're having all these incredible spontaneous healings and things happen here. And that's my main focus. And then, the UFO thing was, it's probably, they're out there, it's real. And like, I wasn't really that interested until they started coming to me again and appearing to me. And I realized that they're helping a lot, in the awakening healing process, and they're working through consciousness and energy and dreams. And a lot of us incarnated from those advanced civilizations for this time, and I love that saying. They go, Creator gave its best for these times, and that's us, the people that incarnate to make these changes and help wake up the rest of humanity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, wow, that's so amazing. So the Mount Adams has, as you said, so much activity. There's so many different layers, vortices, and planes. So is there any way that there is any kind of military presence on Mount Adams that would confuse people who are seeing craft and confusing that with the military messing around?
Well, on the backside of Mount Adams, you have the Yakima, and it's pretty far away from Mount Adams, but they have a proving ground there, and they do a lot of stuff there. So we do have constant black helicopters. Snowden behind me, pretty far away. There's a huge underground facility there. A lot of people know about that one, and that I think those are being cleaned up. But the Mount Adams itself is very spiritual. They're not going to allow that stuff there. And as I've seen them take out ships, like mostly the Gray Alliance ships and reptilian ships. I've seen them hit these ships with a blue light, and the ship it turns into powder. It breaks the bond between all molecular objects, and it just turns into powder. So I've seen them. They patrol this area a lot, and they take out the ones that don't need to be here, especially ones that are interfering with us.
Yeah.
But we have black helicopters on a regular basis flying over the ranch trying to figure things out.
Right.
And flying right towards the ranch really low, and all of a sudden they start flying in reverse.
Yeah.
And I'd like to see them explain that one.
Yeah. I wonder if they're kind of being moved along by the benevolence. Bye-bye, boys. We don't need your big noses in here. Nothing for you to see here. Move along. So why did you name the ranch ECETI Ranch?
Well, it stands for Enlightened Contact with Extraterrestrial Intelligence, because there is a controlled narrative, and the controlled narrative is to keep it all nuts and bolts and keep it far away and keep it in the past. And so if you stay within that controlled narrative, you're going to be famous, and they're going to give you leeway, and they're going to give you the podium it's, as long as you stay within that, you're okay. And that when you get out of that box and you start talking about, no, this is a multidimensional thing, and this thing transcends dimensions, and these beings that are popping in and out, some are positive, some are negative, are popping in and out of dimensions and messing with humanity, some in a good way and some in a negative way. And you start really covering the biggie, what's really happening. then you start getting censored and blackballed and things like that, especially if you start covering, you know, all the pedophile stuff and the child trafficking and things like that. You were totally blackballed. Forget about Hollywood. I mean, they came up here, like Ancient Aliens came up here and did a whole special on the ECETI Ranch and cut me out of it, completely out of it. And they had Peter Slattery and John Vivanco and other people here, and they interviewed everybody else here. They interviewed me for an hour and a half or so, and then they cut it out. And I told them, I said, I know you're going to cut this out. And they go, no, why would you do that? And I just said, I said, I know you're going to cut this out. I've already been told you're going to cut this out. And I can see by the way you're filming it that it's obvious, you know. And they did. The only picture you see is my hand grabbing a piece of equipment in there. And I gave them an hour and a half of the history of Earth, what's really going on, the different beings, who they are, everything. They censored all that. And you know, they got the phone call, and because I have talked openly about the negative side and what they're up to and this hierarchy that's going on and the draconian stuff and the what's happening with the children and everything else, you know, that, so I've been blackballed in Hollywood, you know, but I know the people that are at the top of the pulpit are involved in that.
Absolutely.
They're involved in pedophilia stuff, and they're totally part of it, and they're in cahoots with the Illuminati folks, the families, you know, and they get their funding from them and everything else. So it's a very controlled narrative, and it's really hard to get the truth out, because, you know, we all know that the whole music industry and the you know, television industry, all that stuff, politicians, everything is just replete with that, with some pretty nefarious stuff. And especially if you talk anything about the Luciferian satanic stuff or any of their rituals, you're out.
Yeah, exactly. And as you can hear, they're fucking with the inputs. You know, the minute you go satanic, Luciferian, signaling obedience, anything like that, pedophilia, biggest pedophilia ring in the world is, you know, coming right out of the Vatican. This morning I woke up and I heard the word. It was for Vatican, it was vaccination. And I thought that was quite interesting. That just came, So now you're being blocked. Now they're messing. So well done, boys. Well done. Oh, you're so hard. So boring, honestly. So embarrassed for these masculine energies that are just, you know. Are you sure you have a penis? I don't know. I really don't know. Or masculine hormones.
I think a lot of
Yeah, so they're really well done, boys. Well done for interrupting James Gilliland. Do you feel good with yourselves? Do you see that smile on his face? See that smile on his dial? It ain't going nowhere. It ain't going nowhere. So I think that we pretty much covered all the incredible beings, all of the loving energy that James Gilliland, the legend.
Your mic's off.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can now. I was just launching into how great you are and what a legend you are. And can you hear me? Hello. Hello.
I have.
Okay. All right, darling. Well, I know you have to get back out on the farm. I know you've got some tractor work to do. That was a bit dull, wasn't it, for a minute or two? But can you hear me now? No.
You're muted.
Oh, no, I
muted. Mute. I can't.
Okay. I'm completely not. They just muted me. Hello. Okay. All right. So James Gilliland, the legend, I really hope that you've enjoyed this conversation. It's so fascinating hearing about his background, the work he does, the legacy he's still in, and the long-term information that he's brought that we're going to know about forever and ever and ever. James Gilliland, amazing, beautiful man. Thank you so much. And to everyone else that's watching, thank you for watching and sending you lots of love. And I'll see you soon.